It is said that it is very easy to show that ego cannot be the unchanging, impenetrable centre of our personal existence, because we have the feeling that ego can be threatened. We emotionally feel sometimes somebody says something rude to us, then we feel upset. And we feel that we have been put down, as the phrase is, and that our ego, our image of our ego has suffered in some way. But if the ego really was permanent and unchanging centre of existence, it could never feel like that. It would always be invulnerable. So the fact that our sense of self seems to be so vulnerable and so sensitive is a sign that it really needs to be kept in a very protective box. In other words, it's very vulnerable, it's very subject to change, it collapses very easily. There's a saying in Buddhism that something that is very vulnerable, that is destroyed very easily, sometimes lasts longer than many things that are much tougher. The reason, if you value it a lot, you take a lot of care of it. So your ego is actually very vulnerable, very sensitive, very intangible almost. But I keep it as much protected from outside attacks as possible. My feeling of sensitivity about it is a way of defending it. In that way, the ego has managed to last for centuries, for thousands of years, and from Buddhist perspective, since the beginning of time, there's always been some sense of ego. But if you ask yourself what this ego is, you begin to see the reason why it is so sensitive and so vulnerable is that it is a projection into the world of your experience, which is continually dynamic and changing. So the sense of self as we know it, as it usually appears to us, is inherently vulnerable and continually subject to destruction. So we continually need to make much of it. But if through the development of insight it does collapse, in the sense that you realize there was nothing there and that substantially existed anyway, but you only thought there was, when that collapses, then a whole ground of your mind begins to change and operate in a different way. You realize you don't need the ego, as it were, to feel, to think, to act. In fact, these things take place in a much better way when ego isn't present. Egocentricity just creates a problem. It's not the solution to anything. In fact, when that ground of ego has been dissolved, it's said that an intuition begins to arise. I use the word intuition because it's difficult to know what else to use. It's not something that you see with or exists within the conceptual range of thought. But you realize the existence of awareness as your true home, as your true nature. You might go so far as to say it is awareness or the quality of knowing itself that is the true self or the true ego. Perhaps I'll stick to saying the true self and use ego just to refer to the projected sense of it in our minds, and the projected sense that has to collapse. The nature of awareness, no different from this true self, is always with us, and it's closer to us than the sight of our eyes and the marrow of our bones. There is a saying in the particular teaching of Buddhism called the teaching of the great symbol, which says, why, if this awareness is so close, why don't we realize it? And they say, well, that's one of the reasons. It's too close. It's too easy, and it's too good. Those are the three reasons we never see it. It's too close because it's like it's what you are. So you never get to know what it is as an object of mind. It is what your being is. It's what your nature is. You can't see that. It's like if you could turn around in your head, as it were, and look at it. You would see nothing but space. It's too easy because you don't have to do anything to realize it. You are it already. So you don't have to go anywhere to realize its nature. And it's too good because everything you ever wanted or everything that you ever wished for actually flows from the volitional side of that awareness. Because it's not just a passive kind of awareness, but is a participator in experience itself. In some sense gives rise to experience, but in conjunction with the other beings that surround us.